inequalities, injustices from Africa to the Middle East, but specifically and perhaps nowhere more than in occupied Palestine, which is your mandate. It isn't just governments and political leaders who are either unable or unwilling to fulfill some of their legal and moral obligations. It's also major institutions like the United Nations, given the fact that it is the world's foremost peacekeeping body. It has failed repeatedly, as we all know, to secure a ceasefire for Gaza over 2 years. It was blocked by one permanent member at least 6 times. How do you deliver justice for Palestinians, given this reality, and would it require accountability, including from outside actors who have, for the past 2 years, either stood by silently or were complicit, actively fueling Israel's war machine?
Good afternoon, everyone. I would also like to extend my appreciation and gratitude to the Doha Forum, Excellencies, Sheikh Musa. I think that if there is a word that comes to my mind more than any other these days is rapture, is apocalypse. I've often described the situation of Gaza, of Palestine, in fact, as apocalyptic, and I'll get back to it, but the question of rapture is harshly felt inside the international system. Those who behave, those who believe, those who advocate for the application of, and those who have to use international law as a compass to guide politics. And today they are confronted with the reality where the compass works. It's not international law that has a problem, it's politics. It's politics that has completely lost its moral compass. And is it new? No, it's not new. Palestine bears testament to all injustices that other parts of the world, like Somalia, Yemen, and many others of distinguished representatives who are here today speak to. What I think, and also the breaking of the trust into the political system, I'm equally horrified as a lawyer, as a special rapporteur, to see the United Nations, the organizations whose very existence is connected to the never again, to the crimes, to the horrible, abominable crimes that were committed during World War II, to make sure that we do not get there again, that never again is really respected, to preserve peace and stability, premised upon the respect of everyone's dignity and equality. I'm equally horrified, I was saying, to see that, yes, it took 2 years to arrive, to vote, to pass a resolution that included the ceasefire, but also the fact that now the ceasefire has been agreed upon. This is becoming the new tool for Israel to continue the genocide, to continue what the genocide didn't achieve. The ethnic cleansing of Palestine, the total crushing of the Palestinians' right to self-determination. And this is why I say this is a moment that calls for full introspection and realization of how are we making to repair that trust. Because the trust that is at the basis of the social contract that exists at the domestic level in democracies, but also at the international level in the United Nations, is under test today. If you see, for one thing, I'm proud to be a Western person, a European today. It's not just because of the system of values premised upon the respect of international law, the rule of law, or equality before the law. No. It's the young people, the young generation, which in the West has been the first from the United States to Europe to Australia and other places, former colonies, former settler colonial endeavors. They have stood up against the genocide. They have been the first to protest, followed by the workers. And what they have been met with? Batons by the police, criminalizations by government, and other forms of repression in the cradle of democracies. So this is why I'm saying Palestine has been an awakening, a wake-up call for all of us. And I often speak, and this is the last remark I wanted to share, of the Palestine effect. This is not the first genocide in human history. This is at least the third genocide, if not the fourth or the fifth, that occurs in my living time, my lifetime. This is the first genocide that awakens global conscience and global response. Palestine is allowing us to see what the law becomes when it's in the hands of power. Palestine is allowing us to see what connects all injustices, what happens to Yemen, to Sudan, to Congo, and including in places where poverty has not been so rooted as it is today for a long time, including in the West. We have a common enemy, and we need to face it, where the politics is at the service of economic interests.
But just to follow up briefly, Francesca, you mentioned that we have the laws, we have the conventions on genocide and everything else. It is the implementation that lacks. I wonder to what extent it is accurate to say that the world has lost its moral compass, or as you've just alluded to now, the genocide in Gaza has actually exposed the level of dishonesty, and let's face it, hypocrisy within the Western world particularly. So to that point, and another one that I want to ask you about very briefly before I move on to our other two speakers, you are the first UN Special Rapporteur to ever have been sanctioned by any state. The United States imposed sanctions on you for simply doing your job, for publishing reports that have taken on corporations and governments that you believe have been complicit in Israel's genocide in Gaza. You refuse to be intimidated. You and I had a conversation a few days ago. You say you will not be intimidated, but surely it must do something to the rule of law, and anyone willing to uphold it despite this campaign of intimidation and bullying.
Look,
does it?
What happens to me is what happens to anyone who stands in solidarity, not with the Palestinian people, with justice. Because today, the international, what the United States sanctioning me is telling to the international system is, we don't need you. And this is the culmination of a series of attacks, of a series of aggressions, a smear campaign. Everyone who's been trying to infuse an ounce of respect for international law in the context of the aggression on Gaza has been accused of anti-Semitism, supporting terrorism, from the Pope to the Secretary General, and of course, special rapporteurs among others. So I could speak to what has happened to me, and what I think is so pernicious of this is the tolerance. So you ask me why you do not, why do you continue? Why do you persist? Because what I'm left with is my dignity, and it's my voice. And while no member states have done what I think should be done, getting together, standing together, and standing up against the United States and tell, enough, this is a violation. This is the first UN person who's been sanctioned in 80 years of UN life, and it cannot constitute a precedent. It's illegal. It's against the UN Charter. It's against the Convention on Privileges and Immunities. And so, please, you have to withdraw the sanctions. No member state has done it. It doesn't speak to my courage. It speaks to the broad cowardice that exists in the international community, and I cannot be held accountable for that. But, there is a but. I will not be silenced till I will have breath in my lungs. I will continue to advocate for justice, not as a lawyer, not as the special rapporteur for the occupied Palestinian territory, but as a mother. as a mother who doesn't want that the brutality that has been unleashed day in and day out with the complacency and the complicity of so many governments, especially from the part of the world I come from, will become the rule. I cannot accept as a mother that this is normalized, and this is why I keep on saying we still have time. What we are using is not something we have inherited from our ancestors. It's something that we are borrowing, and let me be very honest, we are stealing from our children, and this is why I think let's take it as an opportunity to change.
Thank you very much, Francesca. President Hassan Sheikh Mohamud, just looking and reflecting on what we just heard, and speaking as an African leader who has seen for years the way the current world order, the Western-dominated rules-based order, uses our global institutions, our legal mechanisms as tools against the powerless. The Security Council of the United Nations to this day doesn't have a single African permanent member. How important is it to change this reality? The ICC, we know, has operated for years with a focus on African leaders. How do you view the current system, and what needs to happen? Can we carry on with this same system, or do we need some kind of overhaul, not to say revolution?
Well, the international or the global system of justice has been shown the weaknesses and the cracks it has already developed and working. The problem of the international law is that there is no watchman that you can call at any time that there is a violation. Proper implementation and enforcement is where we are losing. When the international crimes become intertwined with the interest of some other nations that are bigger in voice, bigger in power and in position, and they don't want to implement the international law, international law is there to protect the weak at the global level. Nations that have no bigger voice, nations that have no military capability to defend their interests, all these were the establishment, but unfortunately, it's not working that way, as she said. What has happened in Gaza was really a very good demonstration for the weakness of the international law that has happened.
So what needs to happen to change this? Because we are now seeing the emergence of smaller actors in the developing world, especially the global south, like South Africa and others, take on the big powers.
There is always a voice, and it's growing, that many of the international systems that were established or founded after the Second World War is not functioning or is not functioning properly. So review of all, including the major institutions like the United Nations, is now under discussion. The voice is there, but still there are obstacles on the way to do the necessary review for that. Somalia, being a non-permanent member of the United Nations Security Council right now, we are advocating for that purpose, and I believe that it's getting momentum. It's a matter of time before that happens. That is the international or the global order or system. If I go back to the countries, there are so many challenges in Somalia, and countries like Somalia, post-conflict, fragile countries. This is the sort. But there are also opportunities in it to review the whole systems in place. So, said earlier, and said my colleagues as well, trust. However, the system is beautiful and good. If the people that this system serves does not believe it, does not have the trust on it, it doesn't work, and it cannot work. So one of the main reasons is how can we make our people trust the system? As I said earlier, one of the things is that they need to feel ownership of the system. They should not see the system as imposed by higher authorities or by foreigners or by other interests. They need to feel that this is theirs, their contribution, their ideas, their worries, their wishes are there in it is very important. The second aspect is how can we make trust is earned. You cannot impose trust, or you cannot push trust. It's earned. You have to earn the trust. The system of justice has to earn the trust. And in order to earn, structurally, it has to be built. How far the system is independent from political interference. How far the system is structured and the people running the system are credible people. These are some of the important issues. How far the system advocates for equal distribution of resources and opportunities in that particular country. When these measures are there and when these measures are sold to the people, that it's true, then only so in Somalia now we're establishing structures that are independent from the politics, like independent judicial service commission that's independent from the other administration. We are serving also structures like Human Rights Commission, anti-money laundering status, anti-corruption. So these structures are voices, or structures where the people can go without going to the minister or to the parliamentarian or to directly someone who is free from all these influences. That's also the structural system of the justice system.
Of course, and they require not just people's participation, but transparency as well from the government. But talking about one fragile state and moving on to another, Yemen, again, Vice President Bawazir, not just looking at the structural changes that you need to do internally, but looking at the global system. Yemen being a very interesting case in point, a war that has gone on so many years,